Hello and welcome back. My name is Dr. Christopher Gennari, and this is Great Big History Podcast, world history from 1450 to almost yesterday. The subcontinent, conflict, compromise, profit, and invasion. Since you are not required to have taken History 101 and know anything about ancient India, we have to start very basic. So what is the relationship between Hindu India and Islamic invaders? Because Islam is going to come from outside of India, and Hinduism is more or less native to India. I mean, it's complicated, and if you take my 101 class, we talk about the Aryan invasions and what happens. But for all intents and purposes, Islam is foreign, and Hinduism is native. So what's the basic difference? Well, Islam has monotheism, one super duper god, Allah, and Hinduism has polytheism, many gods. And you can already see the problem. These two systems don't go together. In Europe, same issue. Christianity is monotheism. The Romans and Germans were polytheist. What had to happen? Christianity crushed, ended up winning. In the end, Christianity ended up, through the Middle Ages, converting everyone to monotheism. So there's essentially very few polytheists that were around in Europe by the time of, say, this class, 1600. That's not going to happen in India, though we're going to talk about attempts to do so. And so what happens is Islamic raiders attack India, conquered the Indus and Ganges rivers, the two major pathways into India, and control equal taxation and oppression of Hindus. Islamic raiders come in thinking they have the super duper god, and that the Hindus were lesser people. So the Hindus' money deserved to be taken. So you can see they don't get along. How does the Delhi Sultanate try to gain legitimacy? Now, the Delhi Sultanate is an Islamic kingdom that breaks away from the Central Asian Empire across the mountains. It's very hard to get to India because of the Himalayan mountains. And it's hot, and it's not on the trade routes of the Silk Road that connect China through the Middle East. If you're Central Asian, Persian, Muslim, India's out of the way. And so what the Delhi Sultanate does is break away, gain its independence. But now it's an Islamic kingdom in India. So the Muslims outside of India don't like it, and the Hindus inside of India don't like it. You can see the problem. And so to gain legitimacy, the Delhi Sultanate offers toleration. You don't have to convert. And we're not going to be a foreign empire. We're going to rule from India. We're going to live here. We're going to build cities here. We're going to build trade networks here. So if you live in quote-unquote India under the Delhi Sultanate, you could benefit. And the effect of this is the Delhi Sultanate actually does well. Urban elites in the Indus and the Ganges convert. These Hindus who want to stay, like the mayor or the governor, or they want to gain trade networks to Central Asia or Indonesia, other Islamic places, they convert. Because their lives will get better. They gain the benefits of trade and education of the Islamic world. And in 1300, Islam is advanced, right? We've got the Turks in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. We've got the Persians in Central Asia. We've got Western and Eastern coast of Africa and the Western empires of Africa going on. We got Mali, right, and Zanzibar. So the Islamic world in 1300 is a pretty good place to be. The Hindus, on the other hand, will be left behind. So the effect of this is you have two groups that are pulling apart from each other. One is international and one is isolationist. The international is gaining benefits of trade and education, while the isolationist is being left behind, being left in poverty. Tamerlane, the sword of Islam. You can see the problem already. Tamerlane is the last great Mongol conqueror king. He wants to recreate Genghis Khan's empire. And needing money, he invaded and smashed the Delhi Sultanate. In fact, their stories are that he took 900 elephants to cut off all the wealth of Delhi. And you should understand, Delhi is in the middle of the Ganges River. It is nowhere near Afghanistan. It is nowhere near the Hindu Kush. It is nowhere near the invasion routes. You want to get to Delhi from Central Asia, it's a ways. You have to really want to go. And so what did this show? It showed foreign Islam. Islam from outside of India continues to loot India's wealth. But now, foreign Islam will also hurt Indian Muslims as well. And that's new. So that foreign Islam, Islam from outside of India, no longer sees Indian Muslims as part of the Brotherhood. They're also worth attacking. Remember, Delhi was a Muslim city or Muslim-ruled city, and a fellow Muslim invaded, conquered, and looted it. What this meant is the Delhi Sultanate lost its legitimacy, and India falls apart into hundreds, thousands of little empires, little kingdoms. Why? Because it couldn't do its job. It couldn't protect India from Muslims, from Muslim invasions. Well, if it can't do its job, who's going to listen to it? So what does this all represent? What's the summary of all this? Islam equaled connections to a wider world. Central Asia, Indonesia. It meant better technology, better education, trade, and money. Whenever you see education and trade and tech, that means money. But it also brought violence and looting from outside into India. It was always foreigners coming in and hurting Indians. So rejecting foreign invaders meant rejecting Islam. But also all the benefits of Islam and the Indian converts. The people in India who had become Muslim. To reject the foreign invaders is wanting to kick Islam out of India. But it also means kicking out all of Indian Muslims who are along the two big rivers, who are the government, who are the economic elite. It also means rejecting all their knowledge, all their connections, all their advancements. And so what we see in Hinduism is as it's attacked, as it's responding to this trauma, it gets more conservative and more nationalist. To be a true quote unquote Indian was to be a true Hindu. But now you couldn't be wishy-washy Hindu. You couldn't be like, well, maybe Islam's not so bad. So Buddhism dies out. It's not quote unquote Indian enough. Now Buddhism had spread. It was international. It had gone to East Asia. It had gone to Japan and China. It had gone to Southeast Asia, Vietnam, and Thailand. Right? It had spread to becoming the religion of East Asia, the religion philosophy. But it was from India. It was naturally Indian. And it updated Hindu practices. Buddhism sees itself as a advancement of Hinduism. And it was kicked out of India. This means there's no unity. India is impossible to govern. There's too many people wanting too many things, pulling in different directions, right? The Hindus are isolationist and nationalist, while Islam is internationalist. So they're not only is there no unity, they're pulling in different directions. Sikhism. Sikhism is the attempt to bridge that cultural divide. Guru Nanak tries to create unity by combining aspects of Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, masculinity, and military skill. It tries to take all of it and smush it all together. A good Indian would be part Muslim, part Hindu, part Buddhist, all man, a certain type of man, and a military man at that. It achieves some local success. Sikhism spreads. And it's very successful in the Punjab, for example. But it never replaces or comes close to replacing Islam or Hinduism. It never comes close to a national unity. There's just too much anger. So there are attempts. The important part about Sikhism is there are attempts to bridge this divide, to create unity without having to destroy each other. This is an attempt to peacefully bring people together. So that brings us to the Mughal Empire, a new round of Islamic reigning, the last of the great Islamic empires in India. It's a new round of Islamic reigning. But now, Babur is bringing cannon and muskets to India. Babur is the invader. He's the great general, great conqueror. Babur is bringing cannons and muskets to India. What does this mean? It means Indian cities, whether they're Muslim or Hindu, are faced against overwhelming firepower. And so again, we're faced with the same thing as Tamerlane, the capture and looting of cities. What does this show? It shows that India has completely fallen behind since the Delhi Sultanate. Its isolation since the Delhi Sultanate means India is technologically behind. And foreign Islam is again destructive against both Islamic and Hindu Indians. Akbar the Great, the third Mughal Sultan, creates a bureaucratic state. He is going to run, not loot, India. So he hires Sikhs and Hindus into the army and the government. He increases trade with the outside world, making India the second largest economy. By 1600, it's producing 22% of the world's goods. Notice, 1556, the Portuguese have already been there 50 years. Right? So he's increasing his exports to Europe. His government is toleration for non-Muslims. There's no religious tax. So there's no special tax on non-Muslims. This is big because that means there's not an incentive, an economic incentive to convert. One of Islam's biggest ways of getting people to convert is it says you can worship your gods, especially if they're monotheistic gods. This is a point of conflict in India since there's polytheism. But the idea was you can worship, you don't have to convert to Islam. You just have to pay 20% extra in your taxes. And especially urban elites, rich people say, yeah, I don't want to do that. And so they convert. You know, they don't want to pay the tax. They want the benefits of Islam and the connections to the outside world. So you get people to convert. If there's no religious tax, then there's no incentive, economic incentive for people to convert. But also, there's no anger either. Right? Because if you got a 20% tax because you're different than whoever the government is, you'd be mad. So Akbar has toleration, just like the Delhi Sultanate. He has no religious tax. And local judges are going to use, or able to use, they could use local religious laws. That's good for peace. But it's bad for unity. Right? The no religious tax means you're not going to get a lot of converts to Islam. The local laws means, right, that sounds good. So Muslims will be judged by Muslim law, Hindus by Hindu law. That sounds great. Except what about places like Delhi, Bengal, the Indus, where they live together, and a Hindu is suing a Muslim, or a Muslim is suing a Hindu? Whose laws do you use? So, in theory, it sounds great, but it means there's no unity. What cultural influences did the Mughal Empire bring to India? Well, Persian, Central Asian. We get Persian influences. And this is kind of the amazing thing is Iran, Persia, is the dominant culture of Central Asia. Urdu becomes the language of government. It's a Persian influenced language. The architecture. I mean, the most famous building in all of India is the Taj Mahal, followed by the Red Fort. These are not Indian buildings. These are not Hindu buildings. Take a look. If you're watching the video, you've got the giant Persian domes. These are Persian cities. These are Persian elements. But they're 1,000 miles away from Iran, 1,000 miles away from Persia. But this cultural creation meant that Islam and Hindus can live and prosper together. Who's building the Taj Mahal? Who's building the Red Fort? And the Red Fort is going to work kind of like the Ming Forbidden City. It's the palace complex of the Mughal court. Remember, they're 1,000 miles away from their homeland. The Mughals come from Central Asia. So what kind of capital do they build? They build one that if there's ever a revolt, they can retreat and be safe until they're rescued. So the Red Fort shows the same kind of like, while the Taj Mahal shows connection to Central Asia, the Red Fort also tells you that they're a bit isolated too, all the way down there in Agra, near Delhi. The Taj Mahal is built by a successor to Akbar, Shah Jahan, which name means King of the World. It's built in the 1630s in Agra, the second capital. It's built for his wife, Mumtaz Mahal, who died giving birth to their 14th child. So when you have 14 children, we try to mention you in this class. Shah Jahan is also going to build the Red Fort, a palace complex of the Mughal court. It's kind of like the equivalent of the Ming Forbidden City. So if the Taj Mahal shows Islam's connections, an internationalist, the Red Fort also shows how Islam in India is also surrounded. It's also isolated. It is the vast minority of people. And the Mughals, being foreigners, are even more of a minority. Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb is the third son of Shah Jahan. Again, we're in threes, right? And he's an intense Muslim. And he wants to run the show. He murders his brothers in civil wars. He imprisons his dad. And one story, I had an Indian student who told me the story of Aurangzeb is that he locked his dad in a prison so that he could look at the Taj Mahal, that kind of thing. I don't know if that's true, but it's a nice story. Here, Dad, here's your prison. You get to outlook at the thing you built, but you can't go there. And Aurangzeb wants to solve the problem, quote unquote, of India. He wants to unite India by making everyone the right kind of Muslim. See, Islam says that there's one God, Allah. So he looks at his father, he looks at his grandfather, Akbar. He looks at all of these guys who had toleration, who were practical. And he said they're all weak. They're not running the empire or making the empire what it has to be efficient. India is not efficient. And he's right. He is right. By having all of these different peoples, all of these different religions, all of these different cultures, all of these different languages, the very diversity of India works against it. India is always falling apart. There's lots of people. We've only talked about Muslim and Hindu, but remember, we've talked about foreign Muslim versus Indian Muslim, right? So even that is different. But that's not true. There's also the Sikhs who we talked about. And there's lots of different kinds of Hindus. There's lots of different cultures. The geography of India means India is always falling apart. So uniting India and making everyone a Muslim like Aurangzeb would be progress. It would be cultural and political unity. You wouldn't have any more problems. Or certainly not these problems of the country threatening to fall apart. But to do that, you have to break Akbar's legitimacy style. And Akbar's legitimacy style was toleration. So people grew up for generations on the idea that the Muslim government of the Mughals would leave them alone. That if they could go to the market, they could pay their regular taxes, they could do what they needed to do, and that government would leave them alone as long as they don't revolt. And that was the deal. Aurangzeb breaks that agreement, and he breaks it with war and violence, which causes revolt, and it's revolt of everyone, Hindus and Sikhs, and even other Muslim leaders, because there's plenty of local Muslim leaders, like a local governor who says, I have 90% Hindus in my province. If I do what Aurangzeb wants, I'm going to be facing a revolt. They're going to murder me. Like, Aurangzeb has the Red Fort he could hide in. I don't. So even Muslim leaders who want to be like the next Delhi Sultanate revolt. So it's war everywhere. And what's the result of this? Aurangzeb essentially wins. For all intents and purposes, he's won. He's got, I don't know, 90% of the population under his authority by the time he dies. How many more Muslims did he make? And more importantly, how deep is their Islam? And the answer is not many and not that much. Why? Because who wants to be forced to become a Muslim when you're being punched in the face? So Aurangzeb won by just sheer willpower. It's actually amazing. When I look at what Aurangzeb did, it's actually amazing. He waged war against everyone and kind of won. So why do we not remember him as an Alexander the Great? Why is he not Babur or Akbar? Or Genghis Khan, or Tamerlane, Timur. Timur is his native name, Timur. But Tamerlane, why is he not remembered as one of these greats? And the answer is, he had zero ability of his successors to maintain legitimacy. He left a structure that was Jenga, but it had been pulled apart. So that as soon as his successors, as soon as his sons took over, it fell apart. Take a look, if you're watching the video, take a look at Aurangzeb's empire when he dies. And then take a look at it 20 years later. It has completely fallen apart. You have a Pashtun succession, which is basically the creation of Afghanistan. You have the first Sikh empire. You have the first Hindu empire in 1,300 years. And the Europeans are coming. The French, the Dutch, the English, they're coming. And they're coming with bigger guns and in need of allies for trade. And those allies want protection. They are perfectly willing to give trade in exchange for guns to the British and the French. And so India falls apart again. Now, what will happen is the British will smush it all together, but that's what we'll talk about in the imperialism section of this class. So thank you very much. Be safe.